How would you feel if you were fired for helping a person? That is precisely what actually took place too. But Tasha, what happened after the karma that was pure? It began with a straightforward act of generosity that the vast majority of individuals would not even give it a second thought. However, for Tasha Williams, it was only a matter of who she is. The Bayview was where she had been employed at the time. Grill, a high-end restaurant located on the water's edge. A city located in Charleston, South Carolina, for almost 3 years ago, the kind of location where plated like a piece of beauty, the lobster tail was served. The wine list was in excess of the length of the menu. On her own, Tasha has witnessed a wide variety of. They are the ones who walk through those glass doors. Travelers flaunting their luxurious possessions. Executives in the corporate world who are barely take into account the weight of things, and those who were regulars and cracked their fingers when they required more of it. She had acquired the skills necessary to deal with water. That night, however, was not like any other night. It was just beginning to calm down for supper already, when an older man entered the room. It was his jacket that made him stand out from the crowd. His clothing was crumpled and a little bit too big for him. When he looked down, his sneakers were dirty but well worn. Around with a hesitant expression, as if he was uncertain about whether or not Tasha observed that he was even a member of the group. Afterward, the other servers gave him a quick glance. Averted his gaze. No one was interested in taking his table. That, in most cases, meant the same thing. He was assumed to not leave a tip. She sighed and adjusted her apron as she did so, in advance of walking across. "How are you doing tonight, sir? And how are you doing?" The man glanced at me with a friendly smile and requested. He had a look that was a combination of relief and, "It's a good thing I've never been grateful before." Been in this location prior to Tasha handing him a menu. "What do you need to know?" "You are in for a real treat." "Any suggestions?" He nodded slowly and eyes moved slowly. "Considering the exorbitantly priced entree, ugh. The good things." With all sincerity, she laughed at everything here. "That being said, if you are seeking for something, the shrimp and grits is the dish that I would choose. Low rural style that is classic and full of." There was a momentary pause in the man's fingers. "Using your finger to tap the menu's edge, and oh, how not much is only a." Tasha's heart somewhat dropped as she thought about coffee. She was aware of this prior to someone entering the room. Hoped to take pleasure in a meal, only to find that it was beyond their financial means, she said, with a slant. "A little bit. You are aware of what the shrimp and there is a special offer for grits tonight," she remarked, in a casual manner, half off, "and I'll also include that. There is no coffee for you." With a flicker of his eyes, he looked up at her. "Amazed that you don't have to carry out the task." "I know," Tasha shrugged, "but I want to." Before he could speak, she moved away from him to dispute, but what she was unaware of was the fact that a moment that appears to be so insignificant, notable act was about to undergo a transformation. Her life for all eternity, but the following morning, she will be confronted with a reality that she had never before experienced. Spotted Tasha approaching and moved through the hotel, just as she had done in the past. Plates kept in perfect equilibrium while maintaining an monitor her tables to ensure that each and every. Although the customer believed that they were important, she would occasionally cast a glance in the direction of. He sat down, the man whom she had just assisted, sitting calmly at the table in the corner, stirring his coffee more than he does when he doesn't drink it. The shrimp and grits have arrived, and he has taken them. Bites, relishing each one as if it were the last. One who did not consume a hot meal for a period of time. Without a doubt, she couldn't help but be curious. As a businessman who was struggling, he told his experience. His misfortune, a widower who was unable to escape. To a great extent, or perhaps just someone who desired to feel normal for a night, regardless of what it was. As Tasha had always believed, she did not pry after her. That generosity was not about obtaining anything. Responses, it was only a matter of carrying out the. Indeed. As the night progressed, she checked on the situation. On him, making certain that he had all he needed. Because, in contrast to the majority of the high-end, at all times, he expressed his gratitude to her. As soon as he was finished, he looked her in the eye. He positioned a few bills on the table with great care. Table, and stood up. Thank you very much, I miss you. Didn't have to act in the manner that you did, Tasha. I know you smiled, but I hope you had a good time. It is your dinner. He gave her a slight nod and then went away. Exiting the building, and that was supposed to be the case. A conclusion to it, but there is something about the. What Chris Dunbar, her manager, was looking at her. The man's typical behavior caused her to feel apprehensive. In its place, the smug expression was replaced by a different thing, something else. Chris was the kind of boss who was always calculating, who never missed an opportunity to impress upon the staff members who were present. He was in charge of the Bayview Grill and managed it like a. If you made a mistake, drill sergeant, and if you did not, Tasha had made sure that you paid for it on his behalf. Up to this point, I had never been on his bad side. She became aware of his flipping over the pages. Based on the surveillance footage obtained from the host. The act of repeatedly viewing and rewinding her. A conversation with the more senior gentleman, his jaw. When he took up his phone, his muscles clenched and made their way into the rear. In the workplace, Tasha's stomach dropped, yet she ignored the sense that she hadn't done anything about it. Any and all. Incorrect. Indeed, the remainder of her shift passed by in a flash. It was a haze by the time she finished the clock. The restaurant was peaceful during the final of the. Long after the dinner guests had left, she seized her items prepared to be taken home and forgotten about. About the peculiar manner in which Chris had been appearing to be acting, but when she passed by the office, she overheard him having a conversation with someone on the phone. She broke protocol, he said over the phone. I gave away food, which is money that I had to spend. I don't care what the circumstances are, pocket or not. Her work is finished. While Tasha was frozen, it took a moment for her to. This is where the words to register are done here. As she moved away from him, her heart was pounding. A door that she wanted to force her way through. Inquire about an explanation, but what exactly was the points? Chris had already decided what he was going to do. This morning, she had no idea how horrible things would be. But when she went into the room, she was not going to be. Work the following day, everything would come to pass. Tasha had a very short amount of sleep that night. Throughout the night, she kept repeating Chris's comments. Hoped that she had misunderstood what she had just heard. It's possible that he was merely blowing off steam. But, the following morning, the disquiet. Her gut feeling just grew stronger as time went by. In the very same moment, she entered the Bayview Grill. On time, as it has always been, the aroma of freshly. As the air was filled with the aroma of bacon and coffee. Preparatory work for the morning, as usual, but it seemed as though something was missing from the other servers. Refused to make eye contact with the hostess, Brianna. Glared at her with a frightened expression before abruptly returning her attention to the podium. Not even before Tasha had a chance to clock in at Chris's, a voice were heard through the workplace of the restaurant. Tasha. Now, the manner in which he stated it made flat final. Her abdominal region dropped. She forced herself to keep her head high as she traveled in his footsteps, but the moment she entered the claustrophobic office that he had, she was aware that a notice of termination has already been produced and is awaiting his. Chris sat back in his chair and reclined back in his chair. A sneer that was typical of him crossed over his chest. "The reason you are here is because you were gone," muttered Tasha, whose throat became constricted, but she would not allow him to witness her breaking no. "In all honesty, I don't." He let out a strong exhalation while shaking his head like, "She was a complete moron, and you gave away free meals. Theft is a violation of the company's policy, and it makes no difference how kind you were trying to be. That is not the way that we manage things." At this moment, her hands were clenched into fists. "Spent money on his coffee. That is me," Chris scoffed, "and the dinner that you presented to him as being half off is a lie to a customer, therefore don't do it." Using deception to make people believe that they were making a call that resulted in you obtaining a deal didn't belong to you, and you're making money off of it. My pocket. Tasha was able to sense the temperature rising. "Is it true that you are thinking about this location? Over a single plate of food is going to go bankrupt." Shrimp as well as expression of grit on Chris's face. "It's not about the meal, it's about the hardening. You believing that you are capable of doing anything. He pushed the termination paper as far as he could. To her, "You've reached your destination here." Her fingers, as she picked up the paper, she shook with fear. It was exactly 3 years after that he didn't. Even so, just like that, blink. During the course of 3 years, Tasha's head swam. Double shifts of guarding for anyone involved. When they appeared to be smiling through the entire unfriendly customers and a never-ending source of stress. Due to the fact that she just displayed a little bit of. She wanted to shout that she needed kindness. She wanted to communicate to Chris exactly what she was thinking. Out of him, of this entire damned location. However, she was aware that it would not affect anything. As a result, she sucked the lump that was in her throat, carried her purse and proceeded to walk. After she stepped outside the building, she was hit by the chilly morning air like a. She couldn't help but stare at the crumpled. In her possession was the termination paper. As the realization dawned on her, the rent for the unemployed was due in 2 weeks, and, on the other hand, she did not have a backup plan. Was unaware of the fact that someone had been watching, and her narrative was not even close to being out. Tasha sat in her teeny-tiny studio, far away. She was in her flat, staring at the ceiling. Has been seeking for fresh employment opportunities. She is now working on improving her resume. Anything, but the only thing she could do was play it back. In the morning, she was in. Every time she pondered the subject in her brain, the arrogant expression on Chris's face caused her blood to boil. Devoted 3 years of their lives to that setting. Did not call out and instead took on more shifts. Shown respect to each and every one of our customers. Given that they did not merit it, and for what reason. As she rubbed her temples, she let out a sigh. A need to concentrate on debts that did not stop just because life brought you to your knees, but before that, she was even able to open her phone and laptop for use. It was Brianna, the hostess from, who let out a buzz. "Now is the time for you, work girl, to check Facebook. Tasha grimaced as she clicked on the link that Brianna had provided. Sent, and there it was, a post which was made by a clientele. Someone she had no prior acquaintance with speaking. In reference to her dismissal, the caption read, Bayview Grill terminated the employment of a waitress. Just for the sake of being nice, this is an absurd read. This post addressed all of the details on how a customer who was having difficulty was assisted by her was terminated the following day, how Chris, the manager of the eatery, had his staff's reputation for being treated with respect. Utter nonsense, the comments were blowing up. In this terrible manner, how do you fire someone? That person for being a decent person. A human demonstration against the Bayview Grill that. Not her whereabouts, but the management needs to be fired. Someone, please offer this young lady a job. Is she now? Tasha's heart was pounding so quickly that she had never before experienced it. Been the focus of attention in a situation like this. Following then, a second message appeared, and it was from a local news source. I am a reporter for WCSC Live 5 and my name is Tasha. News your story is garnering a lot of attention. Attention, we would be delighted to conduct an interview with you. Kindly let us know whether you are willing to consider. As she spoke, Tasha sat back and exhaled. Suddenly, this was becoming more significant than she had anticipated. She never anticipated that she would not want to be on. She did not want the news to go viral, so she not only sensation, she merely desired to be returning to her career. Or at the very least to avoid the sensation that she had rejected in the same manner as. However, after that, another message arrived in the mail. This particular one knocked her out cold. It was from a mystery. A brief message was sent in the number. Straight, you are not familiar with me, but I am familiar with you. Precise events that took place at that time. Can we discuss about the restaurant? It's. The stomach of Tasha flipped. Who was the important? Was this, and how did they come to this conclusion? A more significant event was taking place, and also, she was about to discover the extent of the mystery. The hands of Tasha were hovering over her as it went. Phone, she was debating whether or not to respond to it. To the number that is uncertain, or simply disregard it. However, there is something in the message that. Finally, she typed back who she was, which unsettled her. Is this the response that arrived practically immediately? You should immediately meet me at the Daily Grind. In 1 hour, you will be able to hear this in the cafe. Tasha debated, but her curiosity ultimately won out. Seized her keys and made her way out of the house. It was a little coffee business known as Daily Grind. Nestled in the middle of a thrift store and a laundromat. A store. When she entered, she noticed a man standing there, drinking a drink while sitting close to the window. Black. When he saw her, he gazed up at her. Reached out to Tasha, while nodding. A slow pace, and you. Is the dude putting his foot down? Cup, my name is Robert Hale, and I am the Chief Executive Officer. Hale Hospitality Group, we are the owners of the Bay City. Observe. Her breath was stuck in her throat as she grilled. The proprietor of the Complete Eating Establishment Network. While I was seated in front of her, I was the leader. He resumed the service that you provided that evening. One of you assisted Tasha in regaining her composure. She gazed upon the fact that he was attempting to make sense of them. He nodded. I was working covertly at the time. Assessment, I go to my restaurants from time to time. From time to time, I will pretend to be a regular guest. I would like to observe how my staff members behave when they do not believe that anyone else is there. Essential is the fact that, observing the rapid beating of Tasha's heart, Robert shaken his head and exhaled. You were the sole server working at the time. On that particular evening, you showed me respect. Devoted some time to elaborating on the menu, you did not. And when I paused over a cup, you should condemn me. Of coffee that you put forth. Kindness that was significantly meaningful to me. As she continued to think, Tasha swallowed. That being the case, why did Chris decide to fire me? The jaw of Robert constricted due to the fact that he was unaware of who I was. The only person he saw was a server who, in his opinion, contravened the regulations he made a choice based on. With regard to power and authority, and the decision that he made just cost him. Tasha blinked, waiting to see what Robert had to say about his employment. I was able to see the news on the social media platform. Fury from the media and the way people rallied. In your rearview mirror. It is not the kind of attention that we are looking for. Chris was a person that was linked with our brand. Risk I terminated his employment today. The morning, Tasha took a seat. Shocked, I'm not just here to tell you that I'm here. The reason I am here, as Robert continued, is because I wish to present you with the job. She was staring at him was job, and he nodded. As a manager, not as a waitress, and not as a waitress. I just want to make sure that your tuition is covered. Should you be interested in dining at restaurants? I was reading about your dream of managing here. Establishing your own location. When Tasha's eyes burned, she had told her that one day. To a select few individuals, she never did it. Anybody truly believed that anyone? I have listened, but I do not comprehend her. Asked in a low voice, why are you doing this, Robert? Grins because it is important to be kind to others. Shown that, and I want to be around individuals like you. Taking charge of my restaurants. Trying to preserve her composure, Tasha took a deep breath. Feelings in the barely 24 hours ago, she believed that she had. Having lost everything, everything had now been lost. Although she had changed, this was not only about her. Not anymore, it was about demonstrating that doing. It is always important to do what is right, Tasha sat. After leaving, she remained in her vehicle for a considerable amount of time. Cafe, staring at the job offer that was in her possession. Simply the day before yesterday, she had left the room. The Bayview Grill, which was embarrassed and uncertain on how she was going to pay the rent. Currently, she was in a position of management. Even though I was waiting for her, it didn't feel genuine. She considered everything that was going on had occurred how a one insignificant act of. She had almost lost everything because of her kindness. In addition to this, it turned out to be the reason she was holding off for a moment. A few days later, she took the opportunity and walked back. Entering the Bayview Grill, but this time with a different approach. In no way As the waitress walked up, the crew glanced up at her. After entering, a few people let out a gasp. Hushed in a whisper. In addition to it, there was the hostess, Brianna. She had been informed about the viral video by whom? After a little pause, Brianna inquired about your return. Yes, Tasha smiled broadly, but not in the way that you. Imagine that. Right at that moment, Robert Hale emerged. Everyone who works in the office, I am able to have his attention. He spoke out to everyone in the room. As of today, the Bayview has vanished into silence. A new management team has taken over Grill. Tasha and your new general were the ones he turned to. The manager is just standing there. There was a shockwave that spread through this area. A couple of the servers in the room applauded others. Chris looked about, but he was nowhere to be found. Following a deep breath, Tasha took a step forward. In the future, she wasn't just here for a moment. Promotion, she was here to bring about a change in the way. In this location, there was no longer any poisonous. Leadership should refrain from punishing individuals for being respectable members of the human race in the future. Evening, while she was closing the restaurant for the day, she reflected on the path that she had to take. Made the transition from being fired to being in charge. But more crucially, she had gained knowledge. A particular thing. There are moments when doing the right thing is valuable. Available at A. However, in the end, it is always worth the investment. Because there is a way that kindness can come to you. Complete. The way you would have dealt with the situation. It is Tasha's. In what circumstances have you ever been disciplined? With the intention of doing what is right, you can let us know in the comments and whether this story. If you were moved, please remember to like and subscribe. And spreading it could very well motivate someone else. As an alternative to advocate for what is right.